I've heard of it. And we're also going to be talking about technology in the classroom because he is something of an expert when it comes to that. Before we get to our first guest, though, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. As you know already, my name is Harry Waters. I'm based here in a place called Valencia de la Concepcion in Spain. It's a small village just on the outskirts of Sevilla. I don't know if any of you have been watching the Euros at the moment, but all of the Spain's games and all of the games played in Spain are about 12 minutes from my house. And if I look out my window, I can actually see the stadium. I can't see inside the stadium, so no free viewing for me. Lucky it's all on TV, I guess. So I've been here in Spain now for 11 years in September, quite a while. And I've been an ELT teacher for a large portion of that time. I've taught in academies, I've taught in schools, I've taught in businesses, I've taught basically anywhere and everywhere you can imagine as an ELT teacher. I've taught all ages from 4 to I think my oldest student ever was 73. So quite a wide range across the board, to be honest. I came here off the back of traveling around, and when I finally got here to Seville, I met my good lady wife and we settled down. So after about 6 or 7 years of regular teaching, I became a teacher trainer. So I've been speaking at conferences and different academies and schools, trying to help teachers help themselves with all sorts of aspects of class, quite a lot of CPD, obviously. But what I like to do is try and give practical ideas for the classroom. So over the course of the next few weeks, there will be quite a few practical ideas for your online classes, for your face-to-face classes, basically for any kind of class that you can get your hands on. And as I say, my guest this week is Charlie, and he has been a director of studies for a while now. But also, what really interests me about his work is his YouTube channel, Charlie's Lessons, where he focuses on various aspects of technology, how to get it in the classroom, and how to utilize it to its maximum. Something I found at the start of the lockdown, which here in Spain was particularly harsh. We weren't allowed to, well, kids weren't allowed to leave their houses for about 51 days, I think it was in the end. And yeah, a lot of people here live in flats. So the online classes that they were being provided, that we were providing them with, were kind of one of their only outlets to the world. So it was quite useful for them, but it was really difficult for teachers, as I'm sure you're aware, to suddenly go online and not really have a clue about what we were doing. So I took quite a lot of interest in various forums and different websites, and trying to get hold of as many different online tools that I could use to make sure my classes were as engaging as possible. But I have to say, I've learned an awful lot since we came out of lockdown, to be honest. I've learned an awful lot from this guy, Charlie, because his videos are incredibly engaging and they're quite succinct. Something I found was a big issue with a lot of the online training and tutorials I was going through. They were 30, 40, 50 minutes long, and they were just incredibly boring. What I've learned from Charlie and all of his videos is it's coming a lot quicker, a lot. It's more nutshellized, if you will. They're nice short videos that give you plenty of activities to do in your class. So he's going to come on and he's going to talk about a few of those things. So a bit more about me. I'm originally from England, as you can probably hear from my accent, but I haven't been there now for nigh on 15 years. I had a quick jaunt around the world before I ended up here and met my wife, and we had our daughter just over 8 years ago. As I mentioned, I've worked in various schools and academies, and just recently I was an ELT education consultant for Pearson uh, until September, when I started Renewable English, which is my own climate change awareness program. I also work as the learning guide for Pearson Speak Up for Sustainability, and I do teacher training for various publishers and outlets across the globe, mainly focused, as I mentioned, on practical activities for the classroom. I remember whenever I went to conferences, I'd kind of sit down, and what I wanted was my lessons to be planned for the next week or two. So it was quite it would always be quite upsetting to me if I left one of those sessions, one of those talks without at least one or two activities. So I try and focus as much of my attention on prep-free activities. That's the kind of aim that I look for, to make sure teachers have as little to do as possible. And towards the end of the session today, I'll be speaking about some of those prep-free activities that you can use in online and hybrid classrooms. I know that things are easing up at the moment, but we never know when this might happen again. Fingers crossed it doesn't. But it's always good to be prepared. And the great thing I found when I started developing these online and hybrid activities and writing blogs for them and so on and so forth, I found that what I was basically doing was taking my old activities and just jazzing them up a bit. And I was also taking a lot of activities that I did as a child, and I kind of dreamt of doing as a child. I think my favorite, the dream I always had as a child was to do show and tell at school, because I'd always watch them on American TV shows where people would bring something in and talk about it for 5-6 minutes, and it was always a dream of mine to have that at school, but it never came to fruition. So when I became a teacher, I always made sure it would happen. And the great thing about online lessons was show and tell just became this whole new thing. I mean, it started out with people just, they'd share a photo or something like that. And the great thing with ELT, with English language teaching, when you do show a photo, it's always linked to exams, and people have to describe photos in a lot of exams to prove they can speak English, because obviously exams aren't at all contrived. And yeah, you would always go and sit down and speak to your friends about your photo and describe what's happening in your photo. So what I started out with this show and tell was just to put a photo up, maybe as their background, or even just to share the screen, and they'd go through describing it. But I realized that there was so much more potential to it than that. So in the end, I had people bringing their animals in. I had one kid who had his cat there and was waving his cat's paws around, showing everybody how docile his cat was. I remember I used to have a cat a bit like that. I now have a dog, but she's enormous. She weighs about 50 kilos. So whenever I tried to bring her into one of my lessons, it was somewhat trickier, as I couldn't quite lift her up to the camera, which was a bit tricky. So things like that came around due to the lockdown, due to the pandemic, they kind of opened my eyes to a lot of activities that I dreamt of doing in the past and could finally do it. A lot of other positives I noticed that came out of these online classes were my shyer students would suddenly open up. They would come out of their shell, because they were now in their own surroundings. They were at home. They felt safe. They didn't have that peer pressure from other students in the classroom. That the nerves of making a mistake were kind of taken away. And those of you who have ever taught ELT will know that the key is to get people talking. You don't go up to somebody and say, "Hey, what's your level of English?" I mean, I know whenever I speak to anyone back in the UK, they always say, "Oh, Harry, do you speak Spanish, or are you fluent in Spanish?" And I always say, "Well, I don't know if I'll ever be fluent. I speak with fluency, but I do speak Spanish, that's for sure. And that's the thing. When you're asked about speaking a language, it's always, do you speak it? Sadly, here in Spain and in a lot of places, the emphasis isn't particularly on speaking and communication. It's often built more around, do you have this certificate? You know, what is your level of what is your level of English? You know, do you have a B1 in English? Because here you need to have a B1 in English if you're going to go to university, and a B2 to finish university. And there's all this pressure on having the certificate. What they call it here in Spain is titulitis, which I guess is titleitis, if roughly translated. That everywhere you go, you need to have a title. You need to have your diploma. You need to have your certificate for whatever it is. And one of the big questions I get asked when I'm doing my live lessons, am I going to get a certificate for this? Well, you can have a certificate for it. I'm not exactly sure how useful it will be in future. What you should be asking is, what am I going to get from this class? How is this going to improve my English? How is this going to help me progress? How is this going to help me communicate? So what I found with this switch to online was a huge progression in my perceived weaker students, but it was more just shyer students. They would come out of their shell, they'd speak a lot more, and their communication just it went through the roof. And I found the ability to kind of switch off other students' cameras would make it a lot easier for them to sit there and relax, and it gave the opportunity for presentations. It was absolutely insane how much better my students got. Now, obviously, there's kind of a cutoff limit with this. For the very young learners, for your, anywhere from, 4 to, let's say, maybe 8 or 9, the switch to online, it was a lot trickier from my point of view. But when it came to students who were 10, 10 and upwards, really, I saw a dramatic improvement in a lot of aspects of their work. One thing I did miss greatly were the social aspects. And as I mentioned before, in those first 50 something days, it became the social aspect. The classes became their social point of the week, because a lot of state schools here, particularly the one my daughter went to, didn't provide an awful lot of support when this happened. When we all went into lockdown, they basically sent over a bunch of worksheets that parents were supposed to print off and give to their students, their children, I apologize, and work through those. And that was it. So for the last, from March until June, we were expected to survive on worksheets. Now, for my wife and I, it was not such a problem with our daughter, because, well, number one, she's quite studious. Number two, we're both teachers and we were both sent to work from home. So it was really good for us, because we could sit down and focus with her. We could make loads of projects. We could do all of that. But a lot of other parents were, they had their 8-hour working days. They'd have to go out to work, some of them still. And they were left with, worksheets for their kids. So they also weren't sure how to teach. Luckily my wife and I, as I mentioned, are teachers and have been teachers for about 15 years. So dealing with one fairly good student was actually, a bit of a dream for us. But, other parents with mixed levels, with mixed ages, and also with, no teaching experience, it must have been an absolute nightmare. And also everyone was kind of, well, they didn't have the contact they would usually have with their friends, with their classmates. So our classes became that kind of social point. And I think the moment of discovering breakout rooms was a revelation for a lot of my students, because you'd let them go off into their breakout rooms. They'd have that bit of autonomy that they wouldn't usually have. And the way I am as a teacher, I don't enforce English always in the classroom. I don't think it's particularly useful to force somebody to always speak English if they can't. So giving students that kind of moment, that bit of time to sit there and relax and actually just speak to their classmates, see how they're going, see what they've been up to, see if they've found any other great YouTube lessons or videos to watch. So that moment for me was quite a special one in terms of their social connection, and that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do now, after blathering on a bit there about how I got into the technology side of things. I had worked beforehand a bit as an online teacher as well, but that kind of got me into it. When I come back after this advert that I'm going to play, I will also play the news, and then hopefully Charlie will be here by then. If not, I'll mention a bit more about some online classes. But here we go with the advert. Let's see if I can figure this out better than I did the intro music. It appears to be loading, which is always nice. I tell you what, I think my most feared thing in all of this online situation has to be the dreaded rolling wheel. As you sit there nervously anticipating whether it's actually going to work or not. This one apparently is planning to continue rolling. So let's see how the news bulletin goes, if I can get that to work instead.
This is Teachers Talk Radio.
I tell you what, it's still telling me that it's music, so here we go.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teacher Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. The Delta variant is driving a surge of COVID infections. A 70% spike among children aged 5 to 9 has resulted in widespread absences in primary schools. COVID has now taken hold firmly in schools, contrasting effects during the first wave. According to Public Health England, there were 148 outbreaks linked to educational settings in the week up to the 20th of June, and this was a jump of 54% from the previous week. The government is said to be seriously considering extending the vaccine rollout to pupils to help prevent the virus incubating in schools. Aberdeen Standard Investments has teamed up with Winning Scotland and Making Maths Count to provide a fun way for children to boost their numerical skills as part of the 2021 Scottish Open. The initiative aims to help encourage greater enthusiasm for maths amongst children, parents and carers, and the wider public. Sponsors have sent education packs containing maths challenges and tasks relating to golf and the Scottish Open to primary schools across Scotland. The resources are also available to download online. As part of the project, pupils are being encouraged to enter a competition which will be judged by mathematician Dr. Hannah Fry. Dr. Fry, an ambassador of the project, said, "All children should be able to approach maths with confidence, and it's important to transform the mindset that influences our perceptions of who can and can't be good at maths." You may not think it, but golf is full of physics and maths, so it's great to see Aberdeen Standard Investments and Winning Scotland use that to help young people understand that maths is a creative and engaging subject with many transferable skills. The Scottish Open is held from the 8th until the 11th of July. Jeremy Miles, the Welsh Education Minister, has outlined plans for the return of education after the summer holidays. He is quoted saying, "Our guiding principle has to be a move towards education being enabled to operate as normally as possible in the autumn. Currently, all education settings follow national guidance. However, as we move through the pandemic, there will be a need to move to a more localised approach rather than a blanket approach. To enable this, we will publish a national framework for each education sector, which will support them to escalate and de-escalate interventions based on risk. The framework will set out a range of safety measures depending on the risk category based on low, moderate, high, and very high risk categories. The frameworks will allow escalation or de-escalation of measures, such as testing, the use of face coverings, and social distancing. It will apply to schools, colleges, and universities." Mr. Miles said that advice would be taken from a number of sources, including public health and the Chief Medical Officer. This has been your daily education news briefing.
There we go. Now let's see if the advert will actually load. If it wants to load, it doesn't appear to. It's still got its lovely rolling thing there, and it seems that Charlie will be here very shortly, as he's just joined in, so he should be here soon. In the meantime, hopefully we can get this advert rolling. Now, something that did really interest me about that news bulletin was the massive difference that I saw between the way schools dealt with the pandemic here in Spain compared to over in the UK. It was a huge difference, in my opinion. It was here straight away as soon as the pandemic happened. Obviously, everything shut down immediately. But then when we went back to school in September, there were enormous measures put in place. School sizes, class sizes were reduced. My daughter's class went from being 26 to being 15. So there could be proper social distancing in the classroom. Masks had to be worn absolutely everywhere. It was, absolutely everything was done to make sure that there would be no continued spread and so on. So it was quite a surprise to me to see when there was a second lockdown in the UK, because here the measures were incredibly strict for teachers, for students, basically for absolutely everybody. So it was something that kind of shocked me a little bit, I have to admit. So I'm going to see now if I can add this advert, see if I can get it working. I have tried to re-upload it now for the second time. So let's see if we can get it cracking, or if I'm going to have the dreaded rolling wheel again. Gotta love the dreaded rolling wheel. How about this one? Let's see. Neither of the adverts are working, which is absolutely fantastic. Great news for me there. Luckily, just in the nick of time, I can welcome Charlie. He's come all the way in now. Can you hear me, Charlie?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Do you read me, I think is what I was supposed to say.
Excellent. I could see you were having some technical difficulties there, so I've come in to save the day.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. And just the man when there's a technical issue to come in and save the day. Look at that segue. Absolutely perfect, Charlie. I do still have the dreaded wheel, the dreaded loading wheel. It's there. It's staring at me in the face. It's saying the advert wants to come on, but it's not going to. It's here just to irritate you. I went out, I went back in, I re-uploaded it. So
yeah,
there's going to be somebody giving me some technical lessons. Well, right now, obviously, but also probably somebody else to oh, look at that.
Oh, you've got it. No,
it's a different one that come on. So as soon as I deleted the adverts there to try and upload them again. It went back to the news bulletin from just a moment ago. Anyway, Charlie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Just got back from work, feeling
How was it?
fresh. Yeah, it was fine. Another day at the office, as they say. But
Indeed.
just getting everything ready for the summer.
Tell us
For the
about your
summer course.
office.
My office actually was a classroom, but I lost my office. My previous office was turned into a classroom because it was quite a big one, and so we needed it. With the fact that we reduced classrooms in the school because of the pandemic, then I got pushed into a smaller room. So anyway,
your status has been reduced.
Yeah, I wear my name tag with pride. It does say Charlie, Director of Studies on there, and I just wear it everywhere. I should probably clean it, actually. I never take it off.
Often seen walking the streets of Cadiz, pointing
Yeah,
his badge, saying,
yeah,
"You do
exactly.
know who I am, right?"
Yeah.
So actually, a lot of people here don't know who you are, which is
okay.
Which is not strange because
No.
We're meeting you for the first time and you've been in here for about a minute and a half. So
okay.
Why don't you tell us something about who you are?
Well, my name's Charlie. I'm originally from Bath in the UK. Don't know if anyone listening is from the West Country, but hello. And I've been teaching English as a foreign language now for nearly 12 years. I always feel like I need to add a year every time I get asked that question, how long we've been teaching, because I do this every time I start a new class. I always start with an introduction, and every time I start a new class, which is always in September every year, I have to add on an extra year to how long I've been teaching. And it always surprises me how long I've been doing it, because when I started, I never imagined I'd still be doing it today, So I started teaching in Thailand when I was about 26 years old, I think. Again, the numbers may be off. After receiving some great career advice from a university, I remember telling my careers advisor, I want to work abroad. I don't like the weather here. I want to go somewhere that's, because I'm quite affected by the weather. If it's rainy and cloudy every day, then it gets me down. So that's what I was kind of looking for. So yeah, I did 1 year and a half in Thailand, teaching in a public school there with 50 students in a room with, wooden chairs and tables, no ventilation, no fans, chalk and blackboards, real, salt of the earth stuff. And then I moved to Korea. I actually planned to work in Japan, but that didn't work out. So I had to kind of readjust. And I ended up in Korea for a year teaching English. It was quite a well-trodden route, what I'm describing now. I think there's probably a lot of people who've taught English have taught in these countries I'm mentioning. So it should be familiar with for some people anyway. And after 2 years and a half, I realized that I probably would need some kind of formal training if I was actually going to do this in the long run. Initially, I know some people are aware of this, but to become an English teacher, particularly in Asia, they don't really ask for much teaching experience or qualifications. It's really just a university degree that is suffice for a lot of companies. So that's where I started, but then I felt like I enjoyed it enough to warrant, taking it seriously and getting some formal teaching qualifications. So I came back to Bath and did my CELTA. If anyone doesn't know what a CELTA is, it's the Cambridge's teaching qualification for teaching adults, teaching foreign language, teaching English as a foreign language to adults.
Exactly.
Known as CELTA, yeah. And that was an intensive course, and I absolutely loved it. I learned so much. And I remember I had a Spanish student in my class, and she said to me, well, you should go and teach in Spain. You'd love Spain. And I hadn't really thought about it before. And so I got in touch with a friend that was actually living in Cadiz. So I live in Cadiz, which is in the southwestern point of Spain. And I had a friend from university who is an archaeological diver. Yes, that job does exist. We kind of call him like an underwater bin man, but he just goes looking around the seabed for, ancient artifacts and remains from ships that were sunk many, many years ago. It's quite an interesting job, actually. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sounds amazing.
And so where in this part of the country, there were a lot of battles with the English, of course. Everyone kind of fights the English at some point, don't they? And we actually, well, in this part of the country, we've got the Cape of Trafalgar. Before I came to Spain, I didn't know Trafalgar was actually a Spanish place originally, not just a square in London.
The first time I went there, yeah, I did like the lighthouse, that's for sure. I was quite surprised by the nudist beach.
Did it just come across you just all of a sudden? You just were there.
Yeah, I was like,
whoa,
there's lots of naked people, which not a problem. Just as I say, just a surprise.
Yeah, yeah. Did you stay or did you leave?
Well, I'm not sure now's the time to be speaking. Although the good thing about nudist beaches as well is everybody's welcome there, whether you're nude or not. So
excellent.
You're free to do as you please.
Great. Anyway, so so I arrived in Cadiz. I managed to get a job in a local school here, and before long, I was offered a job at International House Cadiz, which is where I work now. It's the name of the school is Click, and it's like within the IH organization, you call it a community school because they teach local students, but we also double up as a study abroad school. So we also have students coming in from abroad to study mainly Spanish as a foreign language. So I think it's one of
No, go. I was going to say, how has that side of things been affected recently?
Well, obviously, you can imagine study abroad programs across the world have been greatly affected by the pandemic. I mean, it's one of the things you kind of need to. I mean, teaching teaching during the pandemic in person. Obviously, you've got all the rules with wearing masks and keeping your distance and washing your hands and so on. But obviously, getting students from one country to another that's still a problem even today. You know, we're kind of trying to fight through that, and it becomes even more complex when you have countries that have different rules compared to the others. You know, so luckily Spain has relaxed a lot of its restrictions for incoming travelers, so that's helped. So we've got a lot of students from France, Germany, Italy, some other students, from further, maybe like Switzerland, mainly European. We sometimes have some Korean, Japanese students, but obviously, they're not arriving at the moment.
No, I mean, it is a beautiful place to go, I have to say. Cadiz is one of my favorite parts of Spain. I remember when I was younger, and you know, whenever I heard about Spain, when I was in the UK, all I ever heard about was Marbella or Benidorm, and that was my image of Spain. Like that's what it was just people going to the south of Spain to get drunk, and that was all it was. And then I kind of, when I came here, I visited my parents who were living in Aranda del Duero, further up near Valladolid. And I saw some of the area around there. I went up to Cantabria, then I came down to Seville. Strangely enough, because I like bridges, and here in Seville, we have the world's first single-sided suspension bridge. So my reason to come here, that was my reason to come here. I can actually see it right now from my balcony, so I can see the reason right there. But yeah, and
well, obviously the bridge in Cadiz then too.
Oh, of course, beautiful. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
My wife was like, let's go to the beach, and I just thought, oh, the beach. She wasn't my wife at the time. She was my girlfriend at the time. We didn't just meet and get married straight away.
Yeah.
It took a while
to convince her. Yeah.
And she was like, let's go to the beach. And I was like, oh, I don't know. All of my image of the beach was, not a particularly fond image. And we went down to Cadiz, and we went to some of the beaches along the Cadiz coast, like Trafalgar, for example. And I was I was blown away. I mean, not
Mm.
literally by the Levante. Luckily, we had a
Well,
good day.
yeah, that's another topic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's such a stunning. Like, what I love about Cadiz is it's a small city,
Hmm.
but you know, you've got the beach, and then you've got all the countryside around it is absolutely beautiful as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not that far from Seville, which is good
No.
for me.
It's great.
And
Yeah,
also
it's-
Gibraltar, I guess, which I haven't been to for a while. I'm not sure how it's been affected by the B word, which I refuse to state anymore.
Yeah. Good job.
since,
Good job.
uh,
Let's avoid it. Yeah.
yeah, let's probably
Yeah.
avoid
Well,
that.
yeah. Cadiz still has the feel of a place that hasn't yet been discovered, although you know it has. There's you get a lot of cruise ships coming through, but I just feel like you don't come across many tourists here, and on the weekends we still see places or visit places that I've never seen before, and I'm always left like really impressed. So yeah, and you know, living 2 minutes
it
from the
is
beach is great. Got to be honest.
Yeah, definitely,
So-
definitely not a bad thing.
No.
I live 2 minutes from a park, which actually there was a fire there 3 days ago, which wasn't very cool. It was the opposite of cool. But luckily, I was watching the football out on my balcony, and I managed to call the fire brigade.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent.
so it wasn't a big issue. Obviously, here in Spain, when everything dries up, we get quite a lot of horrible wildfires. So that was crisis averted. But again, I've strayed off topic. So you are now the director of studies there.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
First met you 3 years ago or 4 years
Yeah.
ago, maybe.
Yeah, I believe you came to give a talk at one of the local teacher training conferences we have here. And actually, do you know what? I was giving this some more thought, and I think you might have shared the idea of. I don't know if this is true, but you'll tell me if it's not. But you had given me the idea of when you have students line up to leave class, you get them to come up with excuses on why they should leave first. That was you, was it? That was you. That was you.
Me.
Oh,
Line
great.
of excuses, I call that one.
Yeah. So I've actually might have borrowed that.
Well, that's good.
For
I think that's the aim of teacher training, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't feel guilty about that anymore.
No, good.
So
I'm glad.
So I remember using that for a few classes. So essentially, what the idea is that you have students line up outside of in front of the door, and they have to come up with elaborate excuses on why they should leave first, and it kind of really brings out the funny side of the class, you know. And I've tried it a few times with class, and it's gone down quite well. So thank you, Harry, for sharing that with me.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. and I'm glad that it's resonated and finally come back to me. I do.
Yeah. There you go.
I do love a bit of teacher
Full circle.
training, as I've said.
So,
which is actually something you've.
Huh.
Go on. No, you go.
No, I was just going to say. I've been DOS Director of Studies for the last 5-6 years now, and it's a position that I hadn't really envied much when I saw other people do it. It looked very stressful and far too much responsibility. But I moved where I work is quite a small school, so I think you can always measure how difficult a director of studies job's going to be by the amount of teachers you have under your stay, you know. And luckily, I actually went into a school where initially I only had 5 teachers to deal with. But as it's gone on, as I've learned more and more, the amount of teaching staff has increased. So it's now 9 or 10. So it's doubled over that time. So, but I think one of the things that really, kind of helps me keep myself in check is I always try to remember what it was like as a teacher. I try to remember how I viewed things as a teacher, because I think that's one of the biggest complaints that teachers have of upper management is that they tend to lose sight of what it's actually like to be in the classroom. You know, you hear a lot about these teacher trainers who kind of slowly move out of the classroom, and I feel like you become more and more disconnected from reality. And that's why I always teach. I still teach. Like, I'm not just purely admin, and I still teach. I still get into the classroom because I feel like I can't really understand teachers' problems otherwise.
Absolutely. I'm the same with my kind of role as a teacher trainer. I can't call myself a teacher trainer if I'm not still teaching. So
Yeah.
I made sure
Yeah.
this year, I went freelance this year, so I wasn't actually working for any particular place. So I kind of
Mhm.
cheated. I cherry picked my classes.
Yeah.
So they were all
Yeah.
the students I wanted. So I had an online adult class, a hybrid teenage class, and a face-to-face kids
Right.
class, because I wanted to kind of, well, try all
Mhm.
aspects of that. And they were all effectively volunteer classes.
Great.
So, you know,
Mhm.
so it was all, they were all fairly committed students. They all
Mhm.
wanted to be there. So
Yeah.
again, that's not exactly a fair reflection on what other teachers would have to deal with. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I agree
But
that whole when you look at management, and there's nothing
yeah.
worse than having a
Yeah.
boss that was a teacher 15 years ago, but
Yeah.
they've now been chained to their computer for 15
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
But then they'll have the cheek to come and give a training session. And it's like,
Yeah.
things have changed quite a lot in the last 15 years.
Yeah. It's like, how would you know?
Yeah, we're not allowed
Yeah.
to hit students anymore.
Yeah.
So
So I
you
remember,
mentioned,
yeah, I think you can always pick up on how long a upper management has been out of class by just some of the ideas they put forward as well. For if like you might come across them in the hallway, or you know, at the water machine, and you just kind of say, "Oh yeah, I've had a great idea for class," and they come up with some elaborate idea that, as a teacher, you know would never work, just because of the fact that you know what students do and what they don't do, what they can get engaged with and what they won't, you know. And I feel like at that point you realize, yeah, that some of the upper management kind of loses touch. So you just, yeah, I think it's important to stay in class. Yeah.
yeah, you really can see that with
Mm.
a lot of,
Mm.
as you say, upper management. You know, they come up
Mm.
with this ridiculously convoluted lesson idea, and you're like, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
that might work if you only have 2 students and
Two
60
students.
hours to
Yeah.
prepare
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
otherwise,
And the
that's
class
not
is
going to work.
5 hours long. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
But
mentioned earlier
yeah.
about your when you started, you went off to over to Asia as your
Mm.
kind of
Mhm.
stepping stones.
Yeah.
I actually started off in South America, but then went to China and Vietnam. And I think I
Mhm.
was very similar to you in the fact that, well, I did my training right at the start of all that, but I don't know. I didn't really know if I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah.
that I knew I didn't want to be in England, so I did
Yes.
everything I
Kind of
could
exactly
to
the
not
same
be
then.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was only when I actually arrived in Spain, I actually got really sick while I was here, and had to stay here because they've got an incredible healthcare system here,
Mhm.
which
Definitely.
is
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
It's a lot like the NHS, but it
Mhm.
was really good. And I
Mhm.
just kind of realized in that moment that I really liked teaching, and I was actually really
Yeah.
good at it. So I was
Yeah.
kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm going to really focus my attention on this, and I'm going to try and improve and get
Mhm.
better, and
Mhm.
not just think I know everything. I think it was
Exactly.
a big turning point for me, because there are a lot of new students who come in and they're just like, I know everything.
Yeah.
And I've learned recently as well that you don't only learn from other people, from other teachers, but you learn a lot from your students, which
Definitely.
is great. It's with this kind of look at, you know, environmental stuff I've been looking at recently. It's an awful lot
Mhm.
about that. But what I
Yeah.
also learn a lot from are other teachers.
Yes.
See how I segued into that again there. It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
one of those teachers has a lovely YouTube channel. It's called Charlie's
That's right.
Lessons.
That's right.
It
That's
popped up
right.
about the same time that Renewable English started, to be
It
honest.
did. Yes. Yes.
It's
Working
I
in
think it was
tandem
around
there.
the same week. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've learned loads from Charlie's Lessons. Can you tell us a bit about what it is?
Okay. Well, maybe I'll just go into a little bit about why it even exists in the first place.
That would be
I
a good
was-
idea as well.
Yeah. Well, I kind of I've been I was considering creating some kind of online presence for a while. My younger brother also has he works online, and he's always questioned why I don't have some kind of online presence. He thinks that everyone should be online in some way or form, you know, because he thinks that's the way things are heading. And I wanted to set up something online. I was playing with the idea of writing a blog. But I've always been really interested in YouTube and video content, because I just find that myself personally, I find video content a lot easier to take in. I much rather enjoy watching a video than reading a blog. And so after I set this up back just after Christmas. I recorded my first video over Christmas, and the whole premise behind it was that I felt like after the pandemic, I realized there was this technology skills gap among my teaching staff, because they would always come to me with these tech problems, and I'd always usually fix them, and they'd always praise me, saying, "Oh, Charlie, you're so good with tech. You're such a tech wizard." And I was thinking, well, I didn't do anything that advanced. I thought it was something in my head. I'm thinking, this is what everybody knows, isn't it? Well, it turns out I was wrong. Not everybody knows these things. And I felt like, okay, well, if my staff are maybe representative of teachers, not only in not only in Spain, but also around the world, then perhaps there is a need for someone to do something like this. So my YouTube channel is primarily focused on education technology. So it's about trying to incorporate technology into your classroom to make your job easier, basically. So there are lots of different platforms that are each trying to do something different. It might be something as simple like a quiz that you'd like to use to test your students' knowledge of perhaps focus on vocabulary or grammar that can help them in preparing for a test, or just help them simply review language or content that they've already studied. There's also classroom management platforms that can help you when you're teaching young learners. There's also there's platforms such as Nearpod, which essentially taking PowerPoint presentations and making them just much more attractive and much more fun to use. And so there's a lot of things out there that I feel like people are not aware of, or people are just unsure how to incorporate into their classes. And I think once you do, you begin to see the benefits. So I've also played with I played around with the idea as well I've also made videos of just general teaching advice as well. So I try not to be too focused on technology, because I feel like there is still a need for teaching ideas that are unplugged, as that teachers can use without advanced equipment.
Absolutely.
So,
I feel like I should maybe be doing some things like that, but I watch your videos in awe at your editing skills and just think, I'm gonna. I'll just stick to what I do, and I'll leave the technical wizardry, not just because of the Nearpod and stuff like that, but they're really, what I love about the videos is and I mentioned this in the intro, probably while you were on your way home from work, actually. They're really succinct. It's they're not endless streams of you talking for ages. It's 6-7 minutes maybe, and it's to the point. And I found them incredibly useful. I think they would be, I don't think they're exclusive to English language teaching, to be honest.
No, I do try to broaden it so it does kind of capture, teachers in general. And a lot of these platforms are not actually built specifically for English teachers either, So when I'm using these platforms, for example, if you take something like Nearpod, I keep going on about Nearpod, but if you take something like Nearpod, it is actually primarily designed for teachers working in the States. So a lot of the content on there is directed towards the education system in the US is a bit different, but working with kindergarten and I think they call it K, from K1 to 12, I think.
Yeah.
But it's primarily for those teachers, so you have to kind of tweak the content a little bit so it's suited to your classes. But a lot of these platforms, I think, are not. I don't know how many of them are actually for English teachers of a foreign language. I don't think they're that fixed on those.
No, I don't think they are. I think we just see them in that way because that's what we do. So stuff like WordWall or
Kahoot
obviously
quizzes
can be used anywhere. And Padlet, of course. I absolutely love Padlet. I always use Padlet in my
there's actually
live lessons.
There's a kind of a new one that's out. Well, new. It's called Wakelet. And that's kind of come up as potentially like not a competitor, but just in the same. You okay?
Sorry, mate. I don't know why I said something. I said live lessons, and for some reason, the video from one of my live lessons just came on. Just turned
It's
on.
Google listening in again. Is that what's happening?
It's Google. Leave me alone. It just turned on, and I was like, "Hang on a minute. I don't want to know about Kirsty going to Iceland. It's okay. I'm fine. I'm actually talking to.
I'm actually
talking to
having a
Charlie.
conversation. Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So so there's a new platform called Wakelet out, which is kind of similar to Padlet in that you can kind of collate material and content from online resources, and so it's great for project work. But again, Wakelet is not, exclusively for English teachers. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So there's a lot of I just like being able to get students to be creative, and I think if we can use tech for that, and I think it's a lot more accessible for students nowadays, because how many of our students have got mobile phones now? Just that's the one of the first ways you can get your students involved with a lot of the tech that's available.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's what I try and particularly with teens, try and get as many kind of video projects going and all of those kind of things. I have a great activity called Songversations that I try and do with all of my students, where it's basically where you talk to a song. So
you talk to a song.
You talk to a song, yeah. So you. It's much easier if I could show you. I think I might have had that.
Yeah.
I think I did it
Adele.
with Adele.
Yeah,
I did. I did it with Hello. There you go. So that activity basically, and getting students to do it and record themselves. So
you'd say hello, and you would say,
I'd say, hi there. Who am I speaking to?
And I'd say, it's me.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you can do it with almost any song. But getting students to do that and get students to look at the videos and make the videos and then share them on Flipgrid or something like that.
Yes, that's another one we haven't mentioned.
There's so many different options out there, so many options available to students that it's almost scary, which is what I love about Charlie's lessons. Also, for quite a while, well, until I spoke to you the day before yesterday, I just kind of assumed that your surname was Lessons.
Do you know what? I'm actually getting emails for a Charlie's Lessons that I'm actually getting emails for job opportunities for a Charlie's Lessons. That's not me, but I get them through to my email account from recruitment agencies in the UK. And they're like, we've got this great job as a mortgage broker coming up in this bank. And I'm thinking, shall I just apply for it anyway and just see what happens? See how far I can go before they realize it's not actually Charlie.
Pretty good wage, yeah.
Exactly.
Like, so, guys, what do you know about Nearpod? I'm not sure that's appropriate as a mortgage advisor. But yeah, I knew nothing about Nearpod until I watched your video. And the one I really loved, as I mentioned before, I really loved the Padlet video because I wasn't exploiting Padlet anywhere near to its potential. And that's one of the things I really like about it is it, even for things that we do know, it has an awful lot of potential. What I did love was, go on.
No, I was going to say, I mean, the Padlet video was one I had in my mind right from the beginning, because Padlet's just one of those great platforms where it's just absolutely open to however you want to use it. There's very little restriction on how you use it. So and I like, even though they have all these different templates, it's really up to you how you want to set that up with your students. And it's I found it very useful for group activities, project work. And I go into this in my videos, but one of the things I love about educational technology is that I find it encourages more participation on the student side than maybe a face-to-face class, or using tech in a face-to-face class, which is also possible. But there are some students that if you did project work in class, in groups, and when you're doing project work face-to-face, it requires the students to be, relies on their social skills and their kind of collaborative skills. And some students I've had are quite shy, they're quite reserved, they won't really participate, they won't collaborate in person. But when we go online, or when we do this work remotely, then a lot of these students actually, these platforms lend themselves to these students. Like they can access it and they can participate much more using these platforms than they would in a physical classroom. So that's been one of my favorite things about it, you know.
Yeah.
So
I was mentioning that before, particularly with I've found it particularly with like the shyer students as well, and for the particularly for sort of teens.
Yes.
It's just opened up this whole new world. I feel a bit like Aladdin at the moment. But it's just incredible to see these students who were previously, you know, really shy in class, wouldn't say anything, wouldn't do much. You know, group project work would end up being, you know, the loud one would come up and read the PowerPoint off the board.
Exactly.
And suddenly it's changed, and it's not like that anymore. Everyone has their opportunity, and people can record their own videos, and I think
or record their own voice as well. Audio recordings, I find those are perfect for those kind of students, you know.
Exactly. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to go to the news, and then I'm going to try again with these adverts to see if they work. I'm going to go to the news. So would you mind hanging around for a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll go to the news bulletin again, and then in about 3.5 minutes, we'll be back.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teacher Talk Radio news with Gail Glenn. The Delta variant is driving a surge of COVID infections. A 70% spike among children aged 5 to 9 has resulted in widespread absences in primary schools. COVID has now taken hold firmly in schools, contrasting effects during the first wave. According to Public Health England, there were 148 outbreaks linked to educational settings in the week up to the 20th of June, and this was a jump of 54% from the previous week. The government is said to be seriously considering extending the vaccine rollout to pupils to help prevent the virus incubating in schools. Aberdeen Standard Investments has teamed up with Winning Scotland and Making Maths Count to provide a fun way for children to boost their numerical skills as part of the 2021 Scottish Open. The initiative aims to help encourage greater enthusiasm for maths amongst children, parents and carers, and the wider public. Sponsors have sent education packs containing maths challenges and tasks relating to golf and the Scottish Open to primary schools across Scotland. The resources are also available to download online. As part of the project, pupils are being encouraged to enter a competition which will be judged by mathematician Dr. Hannah Fry. Dr. Fry, an ambassador of the project, said, "All children should be able to approach maths with confidence, and it's important to transform the mindset that influences our perceptions of who can and can't be good at maths." You may not think it, but golf is full of physics and maths, so it's great to see Aberdeen Standard Investments and Winning Scotland use that to help young people understand that maths is a creative and engaging subject with many transferable skills. The Scottish Open is held from the 8th until the 11th of July. Jeremy Miles, the Welsh Education Minister, has outlined plans for the return of education after the summer holidays. He is quoted saying, "Our guiding principle has to be a move towards education being enabled to operate as normally as possible in the autumn. Currently, all education settings follow national guidance. However, as we move through the pandemic, there will be a need to move to a more localised approach rather than a blanket approach. To enable this, we will publish a national framework for each education sector which will support them to escalate and de-escalate interventions based on risk. The framework will set out a range of safety measures depending on the risk category based on low, moderate, high, and very high risk categories. The frameworks will allow escalation or de-escalation of measures, such as testing, the use of face coverings, and social distancing. It will apply to schools, colleges, and universities. Mr. Miles said that advice would be taken from a number of sources, including public health and the Chief Medical Officer. This has been your daily education news briefing.
There we go. So I'm going to try again and see if this advert's going to work for me. But I don't know what it is, but apparently the file that I have is obviously the wrong file, because it's just got the dreaded wheel, as I keep calling it, is sitting there rolling around, almost laughing at me, I think, saying, I'm not going to play, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I've tried uploading it twice. It told me that it's not going to work now. So my apologies. So Charlie, back to you. I've stopped the other one, so there you go. So Charlie, I wanted to talk briefly about I think one of my favorites recently was Zoom versus Meet.
Yes.
Something that's very close to my heart, and something I noticed. Something I noticed, I think probably mid-lockdown, that suddenly it was like Zoom, Meet, and Teams had almost become an Android versus iOS thing. It was,
Samsung or Sega versus Nintendo.
Exactly. Suddenly it was like, I don't know why, but there was, for example, I'd speak to my family on the odd occasion that I do, and my cousin would set it up, and she'd be like, "Let's go on Meet." And I don't know why, but I'd get argumentative about it. And I don't know why. I suddenly felt this affiliation to Zoom. I mean, obviously just because I understand it and I know how to use it, but I saw this kind of develop, but it was with everybody. Suddenly people were getting really defensive of their platform. And it's like, it's not your platform. It's just the one that you know how to use. So what were the sort of advantages and disadvantages you find between Zoom and Meet?
Well, I mean, we've been using Zoom. So from I'll just say that at the beginning, we use Zoom at our school. We did have a period actually during the pandemic. I don't know if anyone remembers this. Do you remember when there was a big security issue with Zoom? Maybe last year, and had the bombing of people bombing meetings and people downloading a program from the Zoom website that wasn't actually the Zoom program, and having their data stolen, etc. So I remember we had like a 2-week period where we tried other services. So there is another service called BlueJeans. Yes, that's true. You heard it right. BlueJeans. It's actually one of Facebook's partner companies. We tried BlueJeans. It was terrible. I'm sorry, I have to say. I hope they've approved the service by now, but when we used it back in 2020, it wasn't a great service.
My wife was using Big Blue Button, which another blue related thing for some reason, which also wasn't exactly great. Yeah,
we compared all of these. Big Blue Button. There's one called WebEx as well.
The original, I think WebEx was, to be honest.
Yeah, but back then, Google Meet didn't really exist then. It was Hangouts. It was Google Hangouts. And Google Hangouts was essentially Skype, was an alternative to Skype, with no features or tools for teaching whatsoever. People would use Skype and Hangouts to teach, but it was not designed for that, So now Google Meet's kind of, Google has some great applications, and it makes sense that it's going to produce or make something that's going to rival Zoom. I think Zoom now is still probably the one that everybody uses more or the most, definitely more than Google Meet. But Google, they're always rolling out updates. They're always improving things, and I feel that Google Meet eventually will catch up with Zoom, because I do feel like Zoom is the standard, and I think Google Meet definitely has all the resources to surpass it. So the big advantages for me for Zoom is I really feel that Zoom is built for teaching with all the options it has. I just feel that it's if you're going to teach online, you have to use Zoom. Not only for the whiteboard, I just love the fact that the whiteboard is built into the program itself. There's no dilly-dallying. You just open the whiteboard and it's right in front of the students immediately.
And they can all use it as well.
They can annotate this.
Use the annotating tool, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, that's one of the great things, because a video call or teaching online, the students can feel sometimes it's like they're not really participating, or they're just kind of sat there watching you. And when you introduce things like annotation on whiteboards, the breakout rooms, etc., then they feel part of the class. Then they feel like they have a responsibility in the class. They feel like they have a role to play. So the breakout rooms, which was actually a feature that first came out on Zoom, it's now being imitated in Google Meet. Has breakout rooms now on its paid service with Google Workspace, but it first came out on Zoom. I think Microsoft Teams probably has. I think it probably has breakout rooms too now. So
they are brilliant.
Again,
I have to say they are an absolute revelation. I mean, I think for me, at the start of the lockdown, breakout rooms were basically a way of just, here you go, get rid of the students for 5 minutes because I've been in front of a computer for hours and I need a break. But then eventually, as it kind of developed, and I was a lot with my training session, which is actually called Zooming Around. So obviously, it's going to be pretty Zoom based. But a lot of it's focused on like how to make the most of a breakout room. Now, with language teaching, obviously with English teaching especially, you want students to be using English as much as possible. But I also found, again, I mentioned this at the start of the show, that particularly during the really strict lockdown, that those kind of 5 or 6 minutes when they were allowed to go off and see their friends and speak to their friends, and you just kind of, you would give them a task, which they'd usually do, but they'd often do it in Spanish and come back and feedback in English. I don't know, they just, I think that really warmed my heart to Zoom.
Yes, definitely. For those who are not aware, like just something we maybe point out with ELT is the use of the student's first language in the classroom is kind of the subject of some debate, So
quite a lot of debate.
Yeah. I'm underplaying it a little bit, but so we usually focus on the use of L2, which would be English in this case. Is that right? Or was it L1? Yes, L2. L2,
the second language.
Sorry. That's it.
Our L2 is Spanish. Well, I don't know how many languages do you speak. I only speak English and Spanish.
Yeah. And so giving the students that kind of leeway to go away and speak in their own language really kind of helps relax them. And I think I actually have a video as well on breakout room activities that I kind of developed over the time I was teaching online. And again, that's because of Zoom. I wouldn't have come up with those ideas if it wasn't for Zoom. I think
when I watched that video, I watched it and it didn't cross over with any of the ones I did, and I was like, "This is brilliant." Now I've got loads of new activities as well,
ideas.
And I can't even accuse him of stealing anything. You couldn't have stolen them because you didn't know them. So, it just, for me, that really opened my eyes to the sheer potential that you can have with breakout rooms. Like there's so much you can do with them.
Yeah, I think as well though, like thinking about Google Meet, something that I've pointed out in the video are captions that Google Meet does have, and I think the captions in an English language class are pretty powerful. You can use them to help a lot of students that are studying online. And I think if Zoom were to adopt live captioning in their class and their product, then I think that would make it like, I don't know, it would make it probably the best out there. And so I think having captions, especially because it's not only for, one of the great things is not only for you speaking, but it's also if you play a video, for example, I come across a lot of content online that doesn't have subtitles. And so, but just by playing the audio through Google Meet, it will pick up on that and create captions for that. So, I know that my students really appreciate that.
Yeah, what I've found with Zoom, which is with the captions, obviously you can get closed captions on it, but you have to go through a different provider and you have to pay for it. And I don't know about you, but as a teacher, I don't really have enough money for subscriptions for you know, Zoom Professional plus well, we all know how many subscriptions there are in the world now. It's endless, and I you know, it's not something that I put high on my priorities list, but I know that when I do release my interviews on Renewable English, that it would be a lot better with captions, and I don't have the time to go in afterwards and download the transcript and then put them up on there, because you know it is a bit of a one-man band at the moment. So until I can hire someone else.
Well, luckily your YouTube, for example, has auto captioning, so it comes up with auto subtitles. But what I was going to say was I forgot what I was going to say now.
That's my fault.
I was talking about Google Meets and captions.
You were talking about Meets, and when you played YouTube videos, it came up. And
but I think as well, just you mentioned the pricing there. Yeah, it's true that Google Meets, a lot of the features that we're discussing now are only available on a paid version of Google Meet. So Zoom still, as its free version, it still offers you breakout rooms, whiteboards, chats, everything that you need to teach online. The only limit is on the time limit on groups. So if you have more than 3, so you and the student, so that would mean that the groups would have to be 40 minutes maximum. So as soon as the 40 minutes are up, then the meeting would have to end.
But you can start a new meeting again after.
Exactly. There's a shortcut there.
There are ways around these things.
You can just sell your classes as 40 minutes long.
Yeah,
and then you got around it there. So
exactly.
I'm also on my channel on Charlie's Lessons. I always make sure I'm reviewing platforms that do have a decent free version available to teachers, because I'm the same as you. I don't really enjoy signing up for things if I can help it. So a lot of the every program so far that I've got on my YouTube channel are all free, and everything I go into in my videos, I'm not going into the premium aspects of these programs, because again, I'm trying to make sure that it's for the teachers in general. So, and to be honest,
that's one of the great things as well, because if you go, if for example you pay for premium Genially or something like that, and you go in there, everything you do is going to come from there. Everything you have is going to go there. Like, it's all going to go towards all of your subject matter will come from there. Whereas if you've got all of these different free subscriptions, you'll be getting a bit from one thing. You'll be making something on Canva, you'll make something else on Genially, but then you'll also have a few things on WordWall, and then you'll go in through Quiz, then you'll go in, so it adds that kind of variety to it. Now, I think that really helps students as well. They're not going to get bored with. I know when I was working in a school, the only real thing there was Kahoot. Was basically, I'm not saying it was the only one, but it's the only kind of famous one. And at first everyone loved Kahoot. They were mad for it. All that, they were like, foaming at the mouths, begging me for a Kahoot. And it's just like, all right, fair enough, we'll have a Kahoot. But after a while, they start getting bored of Kahoot, because it's it's fairly samey. So they need other things. And that's the good thing with other
with quizzes. Like, for example, there are a lot of platforms. There's been I can't really say. Proliferation.
Okay.
Anyway, of quiz platforms like Kahoot quizzes, but also Blookit. Quizlet also has a platforms where you can practice vocabulary as well. So, and every time I mention these in my videos, I'm always looking at the free what the aspects available to you as a free owner of these accounts. So, and it's true, a lot of students at the end of the class will say, "Can we play Kahoot? Can we play Kahoot?" And then you give them the option, and each platform has something slightly different. And I feel like this is it. You kind of play on the novelty value of the newer platforms, but you're still essentially doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But in this, the student side, they're doing something different, they're doing something new, exciting. So yeah,
Exactly. And the great thing about all of these sites is they have like all of the stuff from other users as well. So you
Yeah.
don't have to spend hours and hours and hours making new things, because I remember at first with it was with Kahoot that I would be making a new one and making a new one, and then you get through it in 3 minutes in the lesson. And for me, it was a bit like ironing. It's like, I spend all this time doing this, and then it's done in 3
Yeah.
minutes. I mean, what's the point
Yeah.
in this? Just to add, I don't iron anymore ever. Even though I have a lot of nice shirts, I either wear them creased or I just shake them out, and I let the creases fall out as
I
well.
decided the other day to go a whole week with my shirts ironed properly.
Oh wow!
And it was a nice week. I felt professional for a week, and then I when I got back to the weekend, I was like, actually, that wasn't that great. I'm just going to go back to creased again.
It's I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an awful lot of electricity as well. And until I have solar panels installed on my roof, which isn't just yet. Again, it's another thing. It's a bit like a subscription. It's not something my teacher's ways will particularly allow me to do at the moment.
No.
But until I can do that and I can create my own electricity, I'm going to be very much anti anything that uses too much electricity, and an iron uses a lot. So, but I found that Kahoot was a bit like ironing in that respect, until I then realized there's so many other people that are doing it, and you can find these things elsewhere. And the same. And
I think as well that's why I've kind of also ventured into traditional teaching ideas that don't use tech, because I think that's like, the key is variety, isn't it, in class, that you're kind of doing things, a different thing each day, and that way you kind of keep the students' attention, keep them engaged, and I find that if you've been using platforms like Kahoot, quizzes, and so on, and then one day you decide, we're just going to play a good old board game, or a good game, a good old word game, perhaps like a game like Taboo, where students have to describe the word, or flashcard games or something like this. That's something just back to basics. I feel like students are much more receptive to that after they've been they on their phones.
I mean, you can be as much of a tech expert as you like, but there are these things which I think the talk I did was, I think it was all classes great and small, or a fistful of fillers or something like that. It was basically just loads of no prep activities that that are fun and have a language payoff. I'll talk more about them in another show in future. But it's those things that the students come in with that I don't know, you really feel the energy. I mean, that was one of the things that I found was really difficult going back into the classroom this year. A lot of people said they struggled with going to hybrid, or they struggled going to online classes. I actually struggled more with going back to a face-to-face class, because in all those other things, I was learning new skills. I was learning new ways to integrate students. But with the face-to-face classroom, I had to unlearn almost all of my old skills. I was like, because all of my games and activities involved changing groups and doing this, and a lot of movement, a lot of excitement, running to the board, and then suddenly students are stuck in this kind of meter square that they're not allowed to move out of. They can't go anywhere else, and so unlearning everything I knew was I found it really
I think that's
difficult.
been one of the biggest challenges for teachers coming back to our school this year. Has been that, I remember I've obviously taught myself as well this year, and I remember going into a classroom with 10 teenagers all with their masks on. All I could see were just 20 beady eyes just staring right at me, and I'm very I tried to kind of like any teacher, try to build up a relationship with my students and try to get to know them, and it's makes it really difficult, because I'm constantly looking for cues from the students, facial cues, some kind of smile or a laugh, or maybe something. And when they've got all the half their face covered up, it makes it really difficult to read those cues, and you end up kind of having to just get on with it, and rather than trying to interact with the students as much as I used to. So that was like my biggest challenge, and I'm just looking forward to the day we can take off our masks in class.
Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? I mean, you lose so much, and I think the thing I found, the way it kind of made me a bit of a worse teacher in some respects.
Mm,
Was
mm,
I often, especially in a language class, you know, you need to speak, you need to hear what people
mhm.
are saying. Like it's
Yeah,
absolutely essential. But
yeah.
it would get to the stage where you'd ask someone an answer and they'd tell you and you can't hear,
Mhm,
and then they
mhm,
tell you again and you can't hear. And it's that thing of, you know,
mm.
when you're speaking to your gran or whatever, and they kind of mumble something at you a couple of times.
Yeah,
After the
yeah, yeah,
second
yeah,
one, you
yeah.
just kind of agree with them. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I
Or
found
you
myself
laugh.
doing that. Yeah, or exactly. Or you laugh, or you
And
just
it's
kind
not a
of
joke,
nod.
yeah.
Exactly. And I just
Mm,
kind of, I found myself doing that a couple of times, just thinking, that's not okay, mate. You
yeah.
can't do that. Like
Mhm, yeah.
there needs to be another way around this. It needs to
Mhm,
be a way of kind
yeah.
of avoiding this. So what
Have
I,
yeah.
I've done, because my classes, I could do them socially distanced, the face-to-face class. I could do it here at home. What I did was I'd send them outside, get them to take their mask off and speak through the window, so I could see what they were saying. And that
And
turned
then just
into a
prod
whole
them with a
game in
stick.
itself. Oh yeah, staying out there.
So
But yeah, that turned into a whole game of itself. Like, you know,
Mm,
so students would love that. Then they'd go outside, you know, they'd then do their presentation from outside, so we could see
mm.
what they were saying, or they'd go and do it on the trampoline.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
not everybody has the benefit of a trampoline in their classroom.
No, no. But in the
But yeah,
classroom or okay.
well, yeah, or even, you know, the ability to go outside. But as I said,
Yeah.
you know, these were free volunteer lessons. You know, they were.
Mhm,
So I did have that kind of leeway. And yeah, I did cover some classes this year for
mm,
an academy, and
right.
it was so hard. It was so
Yeah.
hard. I mean, I have to say, hats off. People who know me know I wear a hat. Although less now. I don't have hair.
Yeah,
But yeah, hats off to all
massively,
teachers
yeah.
this year.
Definitely.
It's incredible.
Mhm,
Absolutely
mhm.
incredible. I mean, last year was tough, the switch to
Yeah, yeah,
online and all of
yeah.
that. But I think it's been even harder this year.
Yeah, I agree with you massively. I got a, I've already said that to the teachers I have at my school, but I just feel that, yeah, but they've all done it great. They've all done a great job this year, and I feel like teachers around the world really have taken everything in their stride and just got on with it really, and just they've still kept the students at the center of everything. They're the most important people, so trying to make sure they get the best education possible. I do
And
feel
still
that,
massively
yeah.
underappreciated.
Yeah, and underpaid. Yeah.
Yeah. Some things never
Um,
change.
yeah. Well, one of the things I was going to mention about wearing masks was, have you not found that you become super expressive with your eyes and eyebrows now?
Yeah. Oh man,
Like
I already had some wrinkles, but now,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
man,
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got. And it was another thing with like online as well, because you didn't have your whole body movement. It was, your
Yeah.
facial expressions
Yeah, we're
became.
just like through the roof. Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
must have probably one of the most expressive faces in the world now. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
so much eyebrow and
Mhm. Yeah,
a
yeah.
bit of a frown. If
Yeah,
something's mildly displeasing, a
Yeah,
tilt of the
oh,
head.
yeah, opening your eyes wide as possible, then dropping again. Like two eyebrow raises means something different rather than just one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there has been
So-
an awful lot of students have been learning a lot of body language, I guess, and gestures, like just
Yeah,
even without realizing. You
yeah.
But you can also see in students with their kind of body language and the way they hold themselves in class. It's
Yeah.
you can really tell how their mood is. And it's coming to the end of the year. I found the last kind of couple of weeks. I always talk about this. I'm in a few Facebook groups, and I always talk about the last few weeks of school for me are always the best, because
Right.
you exams are done. Let's not talk about exams now. We've only got
Yeah.
4.5 minutes left. I don't think I can quite fit that whole rant in now. But exams are done, and it's been the whole year of teachers have been saying, oh, I've got to do the book. I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to do that.
Yeah.
I want to do this. I want to do that. And it gets to the last kind of 2 weeks of school, and you're left with these kind of 2 or 3 almost empty classes that you get here,
Yeah,
where students
yeah.
have done their exams. And usually I'd say to people, that's your opportunity. This is the time where you can really go crazy. You can do an amazing project. You can do this. You can do that. But this year, I saw in my students that there was just no desire. None at all. Like usually, their energy levels have dropped. But if you bring in a super fun project for them to do, like it's great, and they like it really, animates them. There's me using L2, animar, is what you say in Spanish. And it really it G's them up. But this year, no matter what, like they'd lost it. They'd lost any kind of desire to be in class. There's another word in Spanish, that ganas, which is a bit like desire. But they didn't have any.
Fancy something,
Exactly. They didn't fancy. They weren't up for the classes at all. No matter what I tried with them, and all they wanted was like YouTube and Netflix, which I did develop a couple of YouTube project kind of ideas at the end, but somebody just said, "You guys are amazing, beautiful podcast." Thank you very much, Claiborne Edward Gordon. You're also amazing.
Well, she's written another comment saying that she's from Bangladesh.
I hadn't noticed that one.
Joined. Yeah, she's just come in now saying she just joined today. So thank you for joining.
I just joined today as well, actually. Today's my first day. I just joined. Listeners can join. There are only 3 minutes left now. But I tell you what, if you come back next week, I will be speaking about storytelling and the environment next week with another colleague of mine from Serbia. So if you come back next week and bring a question about that, I'll be glad to open up the airways to you. That'd be amazing. We've still got 2.5 minutes left, Charlie. I want to say thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if she's got a question. I don't know if she wants to ask a question to us now. I don't know.
If you'd like to ask a question, go ahead. We're open to questions. But I want to say now, with a couple of minutes left, thank you so much. I know that you rushed home from work to be able to come on for a bit longer.
I've enjoyed it.
I did drop this on you a few days back and said I asked Charlie if he'd be my first guest, because I was thinking of starting a podcast a while ago, and I've been in absolute awe of his videos, and I was like, he's somebody I need to speak to at great length. So it's been absolutely amazing having you here. So thank you so much for coming on.
No worries. I've really enjoyed it, and I will do it again anytime.
Excellent. Well, I was going to say I've got you on my list of future guests. Well, I've got a 2-week trial. If I don't completely stuff it up, then hopefully, there'll be space to have you back on. That's for sure. Because what you bring to teaching in general, not just ELT. I mean, I know that as ELT teachers, we're often kind of, I'm not going to say looked down upon, but it's not always seen as being.
I've had the comment. I've heard the comments that people. It's always a classic one, isn't it? That not real teachers.
Real teacher.
Yeah.
It really is. But it is an incredibly tough job. I've done it in, as I say, in schools. I've done it in academies. They each have their own challenges. And I'd love to just tell you to keep on keeping on with those YouTube videos. And I recommend anyone who's here or anyone who's listening back, check out Charlie's lessons. They are brilliant. They're useful for all sorts of subjects across the board. And thank you again for coming on. I'm going to play closing music now. And say thank you to everyone for coming.
Thank you, Harry, and see you later.
You will indeed. I'll come down to Cadiz soon, and we can have a soft drink by the sea. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to play you out with the closing jingle, and I'll see you next week. Oh, look at that. Is it working?
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.